Welcome back to episode 4 of From Scratch. Today we will be learning more about civil engineering with Lucky Nagarajan. Lucky works as a business strategy and growth leader for Bauer Foundations Corp., a leader in the execution of complex excavation pits, ground improvement, deep foundations, and vertical seals, utilizing the most up-to-date equipment and installation techniques. In her present role, she is in charge of working extensively with management and collaborating with her peers in developing national market strategies. Lucky is a geotechnical engineer with 18 years of engineering, project management, as well as field experience in business development. She has worked on a variety of foundation solutions in residential, commercial to energy/fuel to ports/marine, dams, and mining industries. She has gained her experience working in different parts of the United States, learning about challenging geological conditions, varied foundation solutions, and cultures. With her diverse experience, she is proud to say that she has visited 48 states out of 50 and worked internationally in Japan, Canada, Mexico, India, and Brazil. She strongly believes that it is very important for every engineer to give back to the community to help the industry grow and support fellow engineers. Lucky has been active in technical associations, ASCE, GI, DFI, and USSD. She is DFI Board of Trustee, current chair of Women in Deep Foundations, co-founder of WiDF groups in Metro NYC, India, and Mexico. Also co-chair of DFI of India Support Committee and member of the board-level ASCE G-I committees, building an inclusive civil engineering team, innovations in geotechnical engineering. To give back to her original roots, she has been serving as co-chair of the DFI India Support Committee since 2018. As part of the India chapter, she has also been involved in DFI India chapter initiatives within the Indian construction industry and launched WiDF India Group, which has successfully executed programs during conferences and webinar series, Civil Engineering Career, Connect and Grow. She has also written articles for technical magazines and has been invited to international conferences to advocate for STEM and women in engineering. This has provided a platform to collaborate with Brazil, Mexico, India, and Colombia. Her latest adventure is being the host of Broadcasting Common Ground podcast. Now, on to the episode. To start off, you're in civil engineering, right? So I wanted to ask, what is civil engineering? I know it's a very broad question, but just to start off, since this is an informative podcast.
Yes. So when you think about civil engineering, I think a lot of people imagine buildings, right? Or they think about construction, they think about roads, they think about, very few people think about water, very few people think about dams when you say civil engineering. And civil engineering is always associated with soils, if you think about it. So civil engineering comes under, it has an umbrella under which many different disciplines come under, which is more of construction of anything that you can think of. It can be construction of structures like in high-rise buildings. It can be bridges. It can be roads. It can be transportation. It can even be environmental. When you're thinking about building a structure or a dam in a contaminated site, then that is considered under civil engineering as well. Basically, you're talking about a lot of math and science, of course, goes into it. A lot of numbers, a lot of statistics that you think about. So basically, anything and everything that humans have to live on, things that you build on, is all under civil engineering.
That's really cool. Yeah. I know civil engineering for us at school, it's thrown around a lot, but no one really knows exactly what it is. So what really inspired you to get into civil engineering?
Growing up, I was a very restless kid. I was never a kid that would, sit inside the house. I was always in the streets getting dirty and playing in the sand, playing in the soil, without knowing what it means. And always having some kind of action in my life, even when I was a kid. That related me to not thinking about having a desk job eventually. I'm not saying that software engineers have a desk job, but I'm just saying sitting in one place scared me a lot, and that led me into thinking about what else can I do. And I was always on a little bit of creative side, not a lot on creative side, but a less on logical side. So I had an uncle who was an architect. And when I was in my college, he actually took me to some of his project sites. Most of his project sites were, building beautiful homes for millionaires and beautiful farmhouses, resorts, things like that. And he was a very unique architect where he would really showcase, materials used in a different forms, different ways. So that really opened my eyes, and that made me think maybe I should get into, architecture. In Bangalore at that time in India, I could not get into an architecture school. So then I ended up getting into civil engineering, because civil engineers work with architects too. So architects, you see the structures, everything that happens for civil engineers is underground. If you think about it, right? Like civil engineers, bridges, yes, of course, if you are working with superstructures, then it comes on top of the ground. But mostly if you're thinking about foundations, majority part of civil engineering disciplines are underground, which you don't see, but you get to do cool things underground. So when he introduced me to that, and then I realized, I'll do civil engineering bachelor's and then think about doing a diploma in architecture, then maybe I will, start working as an architect. But then when I started civil engineering, after my first year, after the 4 semesters, my whole perspective of civil engineering changed. When I found out about soil engineering or foundation engineering. And that led me to having more passionate, understanding of what really you have to think about when you have to design a foundation for any kind of structure. What is a foundation? What type of foundations? And soil, when you think about soil, it's like talking dirty, like you're talking dirty, but you're actually thinking of soils in different aspects and different ways that can lead you to design an amazing foundation for any structure you can think about. So that's what inspired me that I should get into civil engineering.
That's really very inspirational, I'd say. It's a nice story about how you changed your pathways and learned new things. So has being a woman in the STEM field affected you much? Because I know women are seen as a minority in STEM as of right now.
Yeah. So civil engineering is it's not different to any other professions you can think about. I think every profession has that, being women in man's world always shows up. Civil engineering as a big part, yes. When you think about the aspects of civil engineering and aspects of jobs that are in civil engineering, they all have majority of men. Majority of men. And even when you think about women getting into civil engineering, one aspect of civil engineering, for you to be a better engineer, you have to have hands-on experience in the things that you do, the things that you build, everything, so that leads you to having that conversations and having the transparency of the field where you have more men and less women. And when a woman starts working in the environments where you really don't have that many other women to help, men have already an upper hand. And if you think about if you're in the field, then you have to think about safety, have to think about safety. And also as women progress in their personal lives, they also have to think about how much time are they spending outside the office and how far do they have to travel to their job sites, and what kind of facilities do you have, and what kind of support is provided by the project teams, by the company that you work for. So that is a big problem. Even today, we are fighting it. I would say I have been in this industry for almost 18 plus years now. Over a period of time, I have seen definitely exponential growth. I think a lot of women have realized how exciting and amazing career this is. And once they get in, I think a lot of women have started helping other women to understand and also put in place kind of a handbook, not really a handbook, but at least handbook for other women to understand the challenges that you have as a woman in man's world and how do you tackle them. And at the same time, it's not just women who have to understand this, men also have to understand this, right? Men have to meet us halfway and help us in everything they do, and then accepting us to be who we are. It's almost like you're actually not changing yourself, but you're actually changing the practice. Yeah.
That's well, it's nice you see a growth in women entering the field.
Yeah, very slow growth, but it is.
It's there.
Yeah, it is leading in the right direction.
Yeah. So you I looked at through your LinkedIn and you said that you're a geotechnical specialist. So what does that really mean? Do you mainly work with not work with, but geography? Is it are you specialized in geography mainly?
Not really, not geography at all. Geography plays an aspect of geotechnical engineering, but mostly it is about soils. It is about rocks. So think about it like this. When you're looking at a building like 50 stories high, what comes to your mind when you're thinking about what is it standing on? How is it standing on the ground? There are so many other factors that are revolving around the standing building. There is wind, right? There are structural components to it, and the temperature changes, and intensity of the wind, the speed of the wind. When you're thinking about it, and the people who enter it, right? Like people and the furniture, and if it is a residential building, or if you're thinking of an office, like all the things that go into the building, it's putting weight on the building that is standing on the ground. So when you think about it, so designing a foundation that can withstand the building itself is what geotechnical engineering is. You mainly look at the soils. First, you look at the soils. Before you look at the soils, you will look at what is going to be built in this space. If you're thinking of you're building a 50-story building, as I was talking about, how tall is it going to be? What is the type of the building is it going to be? Is it going to be completely concrete facade and then you have a lot of wood and steel inside it, or it is going to be completely wood? Or if you're thinking of a warehouse in that spot, then you're thinking about very high ceilings, right? And you have the trusses for the high ceilings. So how is the load distributed along the length and depth and width of the building? So that is also another thing you will think about. And with all that you design, how do you get samples underneath the ground for you to test and see what type of samples they are, what type of soils they are? Where is the rock? Where is the rock? Do you have to put the foundation into the rock? So you have to think about all that. So all these components, and then you think about what type of foundation. So all these components come under geotechnical engineering. And with all this, the most exciting factor is when you think about water, you have the groundwater, and you have the aquifer, and you have the rainy seasons, and you have the summer seasons. And how does the fluctuation of water underground affect the foundation that you're designing, and also the weight of the building? So there is a lot of thinking that has to go through for you to think about designing foundations with respect to soils, with respect to water and everything else around it.
Yeah, I never thought of that when I thought of civil engineering. I mainly thought of just buildings, design. I mainly thought architects were technically civil engineers. I never really thought about where all the foundational aspects, and it's just very complex and interesting.
Yeah. Architects only design everything inside the building.
Yeah. It's very I feel like civil engineering is a very big job that mainly for at least for in high school, we're always if anyone's going into engineering, we're thinking of entrepreneurship or software and electrical, and that's the only subjects of engineering we're really introduced to in school. And then civil engineering is this entirely different new world that many of us aren't even introduced to. I know I think a couple of my friends are oh, I want to go into architecture, maybe civil engineering, but a lot of them are computer science, coding. So it's really I never really thought about civil engineering as like such a big project. It's very interesting, I'd say.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, since it is a really big like project, how do you like work in your team? Like what is a typical day like with your team and like planning building or like the mainly just a typical day?
So if you're looking at, so even when you're thinking about the typical day, it depends on what your contribution to that team is. So a team can involve, as I said, like as early as you're writing a proposal, right? You're sitting in the office and you're writing a proposal to get the project. And once you get the project, you're going to be on site and you're actually designing how many borings do you want here. Borings, when I say, is like the getting the samples. There are different types of borings that you can do. And also like the borings are mainly based on which region of the country you're in, which state you're in, and what are the state codes as per what type of borings do you have to get. Is it a government project? Is it a private project? Everything comes into picture. And then when you're in the site, you are actually working as a geotechnical engineer, getting information of the soils, working with the drillers, and bringing in the samples to the laboratory. And then when you bring the samples to the laboratory, you have a testing crew. So the testing crew actually does a number of tests to, again, figure out what type of soils they are and what is the soil strength. How does it react with water, and how is it going to react with loads? And then after you get all the soil and the rock, so you do rock cores also. Rock cores are amazing. Next time you're coming to visit me, I'm going to show you some rock cores. You can see how the rock cores look like. And in California, if you think about, like, there are a lot of areas in California, closer to Mexico, Southern California, you can see very shallow rock, like 2.5 feet, 3 feet down the ground, you have the rock. So there you have a different type of foundations. So from there, once that is done, an engineer starts designing the foundation. Once the foundation is completed, it's given to the contractor. So the contractor plans how the construction has to happen based on the type of foundation and based on the engineer's recommendation of the site management. So the contractor will also have, depending on the type of foundation, it can be a small construction equipment, or it can be a huge construction equipment, depending on the type of foundation. Again, you're looking at a type of methodology and technique you're using. So in the field, during construction, you have a site superintendent, you have a foreman, and you have operators for the equipment, and you have site engineer who is overseeing all the work going in together. So this is how the construction, and then you have the client representative who is looking at the productivity. So there is a lot of aspects when you're thinking about a team. This was something I was part of in every step of what I was talking about. I have been involved in over the period of last 18 years. But mostly now, my role is as a business strategist in a team of estimators, in a team of engineers, and in a team of business development people, coming up with what is the market trend. There are so many markets where there is funding that is going on right now, right? Like government funding, and then there is federal funding that goes into infrastructure projects. There is a big push for expanding ports and marines facilities in the country, expanding the channel, because we are bringing in bigger and bigger boats, which are bringing in exports and imports. So you have to think about it. And Panama Canal, like, right? When you think about Panama Canal, if you ever get a chance to go up there, you should go up there and then see the marvel of the Panama Canal after it has been expanded, and you will see how big the boats are that has to come through the channel. So it's outstanding. So basically looking at different markets. What is the market trend? Where is the money coming from? Where is the money going to be put in? What is, based on what our company does, the services and the resources, where should we be expecting our time and efforts going into winning the projects and then doing the projects? So there are different aspects of teams that you can think about. So these all are amazing experiences, I should say.
That's very like interesting. It's a lot of like moving components and like different pieces and people working together. So that's very like cool on the different aspects.
And understanding of each other's aspects and see how they all come together, being on a
Yeah.
project from start to finish will teach you so much.
Yeah, it seems like a very like interesting job you have. So you have worked around like internationally, right? Yeah, you said in your bio you worked at like Brazil, Mexico, India, Colombia. Could you like describe like what would an international like project like look like working from people from around the world and everything?
Sure. So I'll give you one example first. Like, a couple of years ago, like we decided, or 3 years ago, we decided, like the previous company I was working for, we were going to start a project in Brazil. 4 years ago, I think there was a dam failure in Brazil, which is called as Brumadinho Dam. So when the dam failure happened, the dam I'm talking about Brazil is known for mining. So there are many, it is a mining capital, you can say. And there are many big mining companies in Brazil which are mining for all kinds of ores and minerals. And they build tailings dam. The tailings dam will actually have the byproducts after the mining operation. So these dams and the tailings are very, very, I wouldn't say very polluted, but at least like it has this scientific composition, which you have to be very careful to see how it does not destroy the human factor around it and also destroy the environmental factors around it. So when Brumadinho Dam failed, the tailings, everything that was in the dam completely flooded the village, which was at the toe of the dam. And the whole village, about 420 people or 428 people died. So, and because of that, government of Brazil came back and imposed really strict, stringent rules on all the dam companies or mining companies, saying that they have to reevaluate all their dams. And when that happened, the dams were also rated based on the high risk to low risk. All the dams that were high risk had to be decommissioned, and the ones that were in the medium risk had to be looked at, and the barrier wall had to be built right around the toe of the dam. This was a project in a small city called Itabira City, and the tailings dam, at the toe of the tailings dam, there is a reservoir. The reservoir actually has the water that is for all the city of Itabira. And if something happens and there is a break in the dam, the tailings come down here to the reservoir, and there is no completely cut off water service to the city. So to safeguard that, we were invited to look at the tailings dam and also the slopes and the city and design a barrier wall along the toe of the dam to safeguard this the reservoir, and at the same time, in the event of the break of the dam, 100% containing the tailings, and no seepage had to happen from the barrier walls to the city. So this was one of the life-changing and human factor project for me. So we were in United States, right? We were working with Brazil, and the company I was working for is a Japanese company, and so engineering team was in Japan. And we also had another arm of the engineering from Australia. So understanding, using United States codes, building codes, understanding the codes of Japan, and working with an engineering company in Brazil, comparing the codes, because we were bringing in a concept which was for tsunami walls in Japan. And the tsunami walls, when you're thinking about the factor of safety and the design itself, is very, very stringent. Very, very, I wouldn't say over conservative, but at least there is a big factor that you have to think about when you're designing those walls, because there is a human factor you have to think about, right? Like if something goes wrong, you're actually putting all the lives around that area in distress. So that understanding of and working different culture and different engineering was outstanding, I would say. It was incredible. And the engineers from Japan and engineers from Brazil were, oh my God, they were geniuses, I would say. And they were also so passionate about this project. And the main factor for us was language.
Oh, yeah.
Not everyone spoke English, not everyone spoke English. We used to, for all the meetings, we used to have translators. So we had translator from Portuguese to English. We had translators from Portuguese to Japanese. So the meetings were like forever. It never used to end, but understanding of different engineering values, different engineering codes, and the construction and the culture of construction and the environment, I would say that was priceless. So that is one example of, international project. You can see like how different countries come together when something happens, natural disasters, and building something like this can change, engineering innovations and future engineering aspects also.
Well, that just answers my next question, which is what was one of your most memorable projects, and I would say this one would be. Do you have any other memorable ones where it's like very like different from what you had usually done, or like, well, in general, like just like one memory that like stands out in civil engineering for you?
Yeah, I think I would say that there was a project that I worked. So I worked in oil and gas industry a few years ago. Oil and gas industry is a very cutthroat industry to say. And again, oil and gas industry has very, very, very few women. We don't really, because it's a very, very exhausting and very long hours. And when you're thinking of oil and gas project sites, they're out in the boonies. They're very in rural areas. And once you go there, you're there. You're not going to be there for 2 days and coming back. You're going to be there until the project is completed. So I was on the second biggest crude oil pump station in the country. The first one is the Superior, which is in Minnesota. And then the second one is the Eastern Access Program, which is in Stockbridge, Michigan. So that project was very interesting. That was one of the projects that is very dear to my heart because I was involved from the beginning of the project of proposal phase to the completion of the project of construction. The best part about that was like we had two construction crews. This is a little more low-key of the project that I was just talking about in Brazil. We had about 110 people in the field, and it was two different contractors. One contractors were all earthwork contractors, and one contractor was the steel crude oil pump station above ground steel manufacturers and installers. So I was the on-site engineer for the earthwork operation completely and the foundations. And for 110 people, I was the only female engineer.
Oh.
So it was a big challenge. It was a big challenge. I remember the first few weeks, I don't think anyone took me seriously. I mean, I'm tiny. I'm not really like, I don't stand out. And I'm also a person of different color. I am not one of the white people. And it was very interesting because they all thought I was so tiny. They thought I was an intern who was just coming there to learn things. And then after the first or 2 weeks, I remember one of our clients coming out and saying in a safety meeting that, well, you look at the person who is sitting at the end of the table, she's the boss of this site. Oh. So you have to listen to what she says because all the people who were on site were all from, Oklahoma, from Kentucky, from West Virginia, and they are all like, very unique set of people that you would get to know and you would get to work with. And once all that happened, and once they realized like, what I bring to the table and making their lives easier and making the project go smoother, I think the tables turned. And the best part about that was this was a little earlier in my career, and every tank, so we were building about 9 tanks, and these oil tanks were 265 feet in height and 65 or 70 feet in diameter. So they were huge tanks. And every tank had challenging soils, problematic soils. So every tank had a different type of foundation. So being a young engineer or a mid-level engineer, I got to see different types of foundations designed and constructed and different techniques on one project site. And by the time I came back out of the project, like it was 2.5, 3 years, I think. And then I felt like I had learned what I would have learned being in the office for 5 years or 8 years. So that's one of my very, very, top of the, list projects I always cherish.
Yeah, that sounds very it sounds very intimidating, I would say. Like for me, it's like I'm scared of my engineering class where it's like 3 girls. Well, actually, my freshman year engineering class was 4 girls and I believe 28 boys. And it's gotten better since then, but it's still very like under 10.
What
Compared to
intimidates you more?
I don't know. I feel like it's mainly being like looked down upon because that's happened often. But like I think I'm at a point where it's like I don't really care like who's like in my class. I just enjoy being in like engineering. It's like my favorite subject and it's very fun, I would say, for me. So
yeah. And I think, there is no reason to be intimidated, I think, because the moment you feel intimidated, you need to find an ally. It can be an ally in your class, ally someone else, or maybe a teacher. I think that person will steer you in the right direction, and having that one person understand, and show you the way changes everything. But if you're confident enough, I think you don't have to be intimidated at all.
yeah,
Just like what you said.
Yeah, that's what I've learned mainly from 3 years of like engineering classes in school. So I was like wondering, what do you think are like a couple characteristics that are like important for a civil engineer?
That's a very good question, I think. Very good question. So the question actually has different kinds of answers based on in what level of career you're in. But I would say and these are all the characteristics that you will, over a period of time, from the time you begin and as the time goes and you start growing in your career and in your, aspirations and your outlook of what you're expecting from your doings, it changes over a period of time. But for a civil engineer, I would say honesty is number one. Honesty and trust goes together. Those are the characteristics that stands out for any engineer. I wouldn't even say civil engineer, for any engineer to stand out. When you are talking to a client, or when you're talking to internally to any of your superiors or your subordinates, whoever it is, I think when you explain the problem honestly and then bring it to that person in advance, I think that changes the whole perspective of who you are and what you are. And building that level of trust is very important when you're an engineer, because if you are providing a solution that is a solution that cannot go wrong, right? So if you're building a building and you're providing a solution to it, and you better build the building as strong as you can and as honest as you can, because if it falls, then you're liable to so many lives. Right? People losing their lives. So I would say honesty and trust are the main characteristics. And I would also say ethics, having ethical understanding of what you do is very important. I would say that is very important, and that would take you a long, long way.
It's very different from what I've heard from like other people when I ask them. They mainly say like, oh, like confidence or like some ability, but like I guess like civil engineering is like very like people involved, so you have to be very
and confidence
ethical.
Yeah, and I think confidence is something that you grow. As you grow confidence in you. So having confidence is a very big characteristic, but that is not something that you can you can probably you can be born with, I think, but it is something that grows within you as you grow as a person over the period of your career.
Yeah. So another question I had was like, as someone like entering like the field, like say per se, like after like college, what were your like job opportunities like after you had like finished college and then we're going to start entering like the engineering like fields?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. So civil engineering has a very broad and diverse array of opportunities. As I was talking about, number one, civil engineering has different disciplines, and each discipline has diverse opportunities that you can think about and you can pursue and be passionate about. And if you think about, like, you can start as a field engineer, you can start as an office engineer, or design engineer. Field engineering in any aspect of civil engineering is very important to learn. Hands-on training I was talking about. And then you have the laboratory. So if you like research, if you like playing with playing with your hands, then that can be something that you can definitely think about. And you were talking about software engineers. Software engineers can also work in civil engineering, because there is so many there is a huge development towards the softwares that we use. The calculations that I remember doing, hand calculations a long time ago, no one does it hand calculations. So there are plenty of softwares that you can use for even as small foundations to big foundations, to a supportive excavation. If you think about New York City, you have buildings. Before putting in the foundations, you have to cut into the ground before you put into the foundations. You cannot make them just cut into the ground, but the cut in the ground has to stand, right? So that is supportive excavation. And so those kind of softwares really requires software engineers who are very passionate about coding and problem troubleshooting and problem solving and everything like that, who come into that picture. And you can be in business development that I was talking about. If you're a people's person, and if you really like going out there, making connections, and looking at the variety of projects that are out there, and then helping bring those projects to your company, business development is another thing. And then you have sales. So there are different opportunities that can be thought about. And at the same time, teacher, you can be a teacher, teach civil engineering courses in universities. There are amazing professors who I have come across, and the passion that they have to advance the industry. For civil engineering industry to be successful and to be on top of the world, I think the engineers, contractors, and the professors, academia, and also the manufacturers, they all have to come together. And you can also think about manufacturing. That is a very good coveted discipline of civil engineering. When I'm talking about manufacturing can be manufacturing of the equipment, manufacturing of the products, and manufacturing of any accessories that go with the foundations. So there is entire array of opportunities as you're thinking about it. Just makes a mark for you to look at one. You can try a handful of them and see what you like the most.
That's very nice that there's so many different opportunities for anyone going into the field. So mainly, my next question was like, how big of a role did like education play in your like journey as a civil engineer? Do you think it was like very like important of what like college you graduated from, or like does it really like matter, or stuff like that? Because I know for me at least, me and like my grade and like my peers are very like big on like, oh, we have to go to top 50 colleges in the States for otherwise we're not going to be successful, and like stuff like that. So do you really think that's true, or like what are your opinions on that?
Well, that is a very difficult question. Very difficult question and very weighted question, I would say. I think the college education does matter. College education does matter. And at the same time, I was talking about so many array of opportunities, right? Each array of opportunities requires you to have some kind of education. Some of them not necessarily. For example, if I was talking about being a field technician, field engineer, or a field technician, for field technician, you really don't need 4-year degree. You don't really have to go to bachelor's, but there is a technology course that you can actually do, and then you can actually get into being a field technician if you like being in the field, being outside, and playing with with your hands and playing with everything else that goes for the foundation. Then that is something that you can think about. education actually can give you perspective. I am not a big supporter of, yes, you have to go to Ivy League schools. Going to Ivy League schools can give you the edge. At the same time, the skills that you build being in any school and the connections that you build being in any school also can give you the edge. If you are very smart and you want to go to Ivy school, yes, then definitely you should think about it. But if there are opportunities that you can follow also, not going to Ivy school, you can get there even ahead of a lot of others with the competency you have and with the perseverance you have. I think you can definitely do it. That's yeah, this is something that I always debate with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can, my example is I did not go to Ivy League schools, right? I did not, I'm not saying that that really brought me down, but that I think even not going to Ivy League schools, you can actually find the passion in what you want to do and what you like to do, and then you can definitely pursue your passion.
Yeah, it's a good like insight, I would say. Is like for us, it's mainly a lot of people think that like just going to like top school will give them like the best opportunity.
Yeah,
So it's a very like topic.
yeah, and if you go to top schools, you have to give your 100%. And if you don't go to top school, still you have to give 100%, right? So if you are giving 100% wherever you are, you will be definitely successful.
Yeah. So I see that you have your own podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about what it is?
Yeah, definitely. So during COVID, I had an idea of starting a podcast. I kept thinking about like, I just like to talk to people. I just like to learn, like, how did they become a civil engineer? How did they become a geotechnical engineer, environmental engineer? How did they get to where they are? Talking about real social issues of being an engineer, being a woman in the engineering field and things like that. So I'm also part of a technical association called the Foundation Institute. So when I was thinking of starting a podcast, I was not 100% sure of starting it on my own or starting just like what you're doing. Like, I did not have that much faith in myself, I would say, for podcast. So I reached out to the Foundation Institute, and then I had another colleague in the industry who was very much interested as well. So we ended up starting a podcast together. It's called as Broadcasting Common Ground. So we are talking about common ground, which is just the ground, deep foundations, which is everything underneath the ground. So we are on third series. Now, the first series was about interview with a survivor. Everyone loves to talk about a project that was successful, but everyone who goes through the failure of a project, very few of them will talk about why the project failed and what did the lessons they learned from the project. So we want to bring that aspect of podcast. So we had 7 big names in the industry and the leaders in the industry who have been civil engineers, geotechnical engineers for so long, talk about a project that failed. And that became a lawsuit, and how did they get out of that lawsuit? Did they win? Did they lose? Were they a survivor? So we spoke about that. And the second series was basically called Rumble, where Rumble is like, we brought in 2 people together who are very good friends in the industry, who one can be an owner, one can be a contractor, or one can be a contractor, one can be a government agency engineer. They both came together and talk about that. We would give them one topic, which one agrees, one does not agree, and they would debate on that topic. So the third series we have brought in is called Interview with a Trailblazer. So this is specifically for women in engineering. So we are bringing in different, as you were talking about, what opportunities do you have? You're bringing in women in different opportunities and different levels who have been trailblazers for the younger generation who are coming in. So that's another thing that we have been doing, and we just finished recording our first episode. The first episode was on, are we closing the pay gap there is a big question of, are men and women being paid the same? Are we getting closer to what men are being paid? We don't know. We are trying to figure that out. So we were interviewing one of the trailblazer companies. It's a company that has put in action few aspects within their company to make sure that the pay scale gap is going to be closed over a period of time. So those are the podcasts that we have been working on.
That's really interesting. Yeah, like mine are mainly just like interviewing people because it's more informational. But I really like your second series of like the debate. It's very very cool.
Yeah.
Like I listen to a lot of podcasts and like a lot of them are just like people talking about their lives, but like the debate one I've never heard of. I might try that actually.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. So now it's like I'm pretty much almost done with all my questions. I just wanted to ask a little bit on like what advice do you have for like high schoolers or like college students who are like going pursuing a career in this civil engineering field?
Yeah, definitely. So what I would say is like, think about what is your favorite thing to do. I would say think about what is your favorite thing to do. What kind of person are you? Civil engineering, as we were talking about the whole podcast, it provides wide variety of opportunities. If you are interested, what you should do is find a civil engineer to talk to. Find a civil engineer to talk to who is in your community. And I can suggest handful of engineers if there is anyone interested in talking to someone, and find out how you can get there. The number one, I think, being visible. I think your generation is doing that very well. I think our generation had difficulty in getting to that place, but I think being visible and being on, there are so many different things that you can get on internet now and then read about, the bridges and read about what civil engineers do, and getting information about, is this something that you're interested in, you would be interested in, do you want to try? So that's what I would say. And then there are choosing the universities. Again, choosing the universities, we spoke about civil engineering universities. There are plenty of universities. And one thing what I would suggest is like, as we are civil engineers are moving forward, we have seen for the future growth of the country or future growth of global, civil engineers, there is a big slump. So we don't have that many engineers who will be graduating in 5 years who are going to be in the workforce. So if you are looking at like majority of the civil engineers in around the country, they're actually doing so many different events to showcase what this profession can bring you. So attending those events would definitely open your eyes. And having a mentor, I would say having a mentor is the most important thing. That is something that I understood later in my life. But your generation is doing a wonderful job, but having a mentor who can steer you in the right direction is very important. And again, not having one mentor, having many mentors of different backgrounds, different cultures, and different ethnicities will give you perspectives in a different, broader variety, right? That I think will be very important. And at the same time, once you realize what your passion is, following your passion, asking for help. I think those are the things that if you can think about what you want to do, definitely you should enter civil engineering. And there are a handful of associations. So once you enter any profession, get involved in the community, get involved in the associations. That will give you a lot. Every association, depending on which profession you're in, has student or has young engineers forums. So being part of that, interacting with your peers and higher level engineers will help you sculpt your path smoother than you may think.
Yeah, that's very helpful advice, I would say. Thank you so much for that. So my last question is that while we're on the topic of advice, what advice would you give your like younger self who's like just like budding into the field?
Well, number one, I would say is like, mentor. Mentorship plays a very big role. Mentorship plays a very big role, and being visible plays a very big role, I would say. Mentorship, where it doesn't matter what age you're in or what level of career or profession you're in, find mentors. Importance of mentorship, different, as I was talking about, different types of mentor, a cheerleader for you, and advocate in the workplace for you, and a career mentor for you. Finding that would be the best thing that you can do for yourself when you're young. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for your great insight today. That's mainly like all the questions I have. If you want to add anything, go ahead, but I think that's it.
Yeah. So I think, Isha, like, you're doing an amazing job. When you are 16 and you're thinking about having a podcast, to get the variety of, like, all the different professions, understanding what people are doing and understanding where you want to go is, I think, it's commendable, highly commendable. That is amazing. And I did listen to your first two podcasts, and you are a people person, and you have an amazing talent. No one can tell you that, well, this is the first time I'm doing this. I don't think anyone will believe that. So congratulations. And I'm really happy to be part of this.
Well, thank you so much. And that concludes episode 4 of From Scratch, hosted by me, Isha Shinoy. Thanks everyone for listening and learning about civil engineering with me, and I hope you keep learning on future episodes. Thanks, and see you later.